This photograph was taken in 1890 in London, England. The man you're seeing is William Ashford, a respectable businessman of 43 years old, photographed in his study, surrounded by leather-bound books and mahogany furniture. He looks distinguished, composed, a pillar of Victorian society. But look carefully at this image. Look at his hands. Study the darkness behind him in those shadowy corners. Zoom in, enhance. Examine what the human eye misses, but the camera's lens captures without judgment. William Ashford defied everything his community believed about him. His case remains one of the most disturbing revelations ever concealed within a single photograph. A visual mystery that took decades to expose. This portrait captured evidence hidden in plain sight, visible only when technology finally caught up to human suspicion. What this image revealed cannot be dismissed as artifact or trick of light. But the story you're going to hear today goes far beyond any ordinary murder case. It's about how truth remains hidden until someone looks close enough to see it. To understand William Ashford's case, we need to return to 1890. London was the center of the British Empire, a city of contradictions. Photography was still expensive enough to be a luxury of the privileged. Ashford had commissioned his portrait from Charles Willoughby, one of the finest portrait artists working in London at the time. Ashford was a successful silk merchant, or so everyone believed. He had business dealings across Europe, traveled frequently, maintained a respectable household, and was known in his social circles as a quiet, thoughtful man. He had no wife, no children, and lived with a small domestic staff in a Georgian townhouse near Kensington Gardens. No one suspected anything unusual about him. The portrait session took place on a cold January afternoon. Willoughby set up his equipment in Ashford's study, arranging the lighting carefully as he always did, positioning his subject in a high-backed leather chair near the window where natural light provided the best illumination. Ashford was cooperative, patient, allowing Willoughby to adjust his posture and expression repeatedly until the photographer felt satisfied. The actual exposure lasted perhaps 20 seconds, enough time for the chemicals on the glass plate to capture the image perfectly. Willoughby processed the photograph that evening in his studio darkroom, using chemicals and techniques that had been perfected over decades of practice. The developed image showed exactly what he expected. A distinguished gentleman in formal dress, seated comfortably in his study, his expression serious but pleasant, his hands folded calmly in his lap. The photograph was a technical success, exactly what a respectable businessman would want to see of himself. Ashford paid the considerable fee, took possession of the print, and likely hung it somewhere in his townhouse, where it would remain for years, unremarkable and forgotten. But in 1898, 8 years after the photograph was taken, something extraordinary happened. A new photographic technology began emerging in scientific circles, a technique that allowed for magnification and enhancement of existing photographs, revealing details that were invisible to the naked eye. A young scientist named Edmund Drake, interested in photography's potential for legal documentation, became fascinated with the Ashford portrait after seeing it displayed in a London gallery exhibition of notable photographs from the previous decade. Drake was a methodical man, meticulous in his work, part of a growing movement of scientists trying to use photography as a tool for evidence. He requested permission from Ashford to examine the original glass plate, claiming he wanted to study Willoughby's technique. Ashford, confident and perhaps seeing no harm in satisfying the curiosity of a young scientist, agreed. Drake spent weeks studying the plate under increasingly powerful optical equipment, examining the background, furniture, and shadows. In the darkness behind Ashford's chair, Drake noticed something that made him stop. There was a reflection, faint and barely visible, but undeniably there. It showed a face, a woman's face, partially hidden, her expression twisted in fear or pain. Drake's hands trembled as he continued his examination. The reflection became clearer with magnification. The face was that of a young woman, perhaps in her 20s, lying on the floor, partially concealed behind the furniture. Why would Ashford have sat for his photograph while a woman lay suffering behind him? Drake consulted with colleagues. They were equally disturbed and skeptical. Could this be a trick of light or photographic artifact? Possible, but inadequate against what they could see. The investigation that followed uncovered something far more sinister than anyone anticipated. Drake brought his findings to London police in 1898. Police records from that time show initial skepticism, but the evidence was undeniable. In the years following 1890, several young women had disappeared from London's lower classes. Women with few family connections, women whose disappearances went largely unnoticed by authorities, focused on more prominent cases. One woman in particular, Sarah Mitchell, had been missing since March 1890, just 2 months after Ashford's portrait session. She'd worked as a housemaid in the Kensington area. She'd been seen near Ashford's townhouse. She had never been found. Police obtained a warrant and searched Ashford's property. They found a locked basement room that Ashford had claimed was simply storage. Inside, they discovered evidence of unspeakable horrors. Personal belongings of multiple women, scratches on the walls, and, most damning, among Sarah Mitchell's belongings, a handkerchief embroidered with her initials, her mother's handiwork from years before. The evidence was overwhelming. Ashford, confronted with the findings, made a full confession. He admitted to the murders of at least 5 women, though he claimed to have lost count. The photograph, taken in 1890, had been taken while one of his victims lay hidden in his study, dying or already dead behind the furniture, while he sat composed, smiling slightly for the camera. He had been sitting there knowing a woman was suffering mere feet away. He had held absolutely still while Willoughby arranged the lighting and composed the shot. He had allowed the camera to capture not just his image, but an accidental record of his crime. The trial that followed was one of the most sensational cases in Victorian legal history. The photograph became evidence, and the magnified detail showing the reflection became central to the prosecution's case. William Ashford was convicted and executed in 1899. His portrait became infamous, displayed in police training materials, and discussed in early forensic textbooks as an example of how photography could reveal hidden truths. The photograph proved that evil could hide in plain sight, that someone could sit calmly and composed while committing the most terrible crimes, and that technology could eventually expose what human perception had missed. Today, the original glass plate resides in the Metropolitan Police Archives, carefully preserved by forensic experts interested in how photography shaped criminal investigation. The portrait reminds us that appearances deceive, monsters wear respectable faces, and evidence can hide within ordinary images. If you found this case compelling and want to explore more historical mysteries involving photographs that revealed dangerous secrets, then subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of these extraordinary stories hidden in the archives of criminal history. We have dozens of similar cases waiting to be examined, portraits that hold dark secrets, photographs that captured moments of violence or deception, and mysteries that technology finally allowed us to understand. Until the next macabre story.